What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And if you guys ever seen the show "What Would You Do," I think it's on ABC with John Quinones, right? Where basically they have these actors who get in some kind of an exchange or present some kind of ethical dilemma with their behavior, and there's a bunch of hidden cameras, and so they're kind of watching the people around them and seeing like, hey, are people noticing? And if they do notice, are they going to get involved? Like, where do they draw the line? Or do they just kind of keep it to themselves or what have you? And then they come out and talk to some of the people and see why they made the decision that they did, right? So this is a what would you do situation. And it's based on a true story, best as I know. It's not my story, but it's based on a true story. And I'm going to change some of the particulars, like the names and that kind of stuff. And I want to know, what would you guys do? This is a crazy story. It's a tragic story, and I think there's a lot in there that we can learn from, right? As people. So let's get into it. You got these two guys. We'll call them Joey and Frankie, right? Joe and Frank, and they're childhood friends, right? It's the '80s. They grow up together, relatively low income, right? The lower end of the middle scale. They're growing up. They're hanging out together. They're friends from their earliest memories. Might as well be family. And as they get a little bit older, they start getting into trouble with the law, running around, mischief, a little stealing, little fighting, stuff like that. They wind up doing some juvenile time, and as they're doing juvenile time, they kind of get into the gang banging scene more, right? And now they come back to the neighborhood and they're big shots because they did a little bit of time, and they're sort of pushing that line. They're gang banging now, the whole 9 yards, right? And and then Joey, Joey gets out when he's 18, right? Joe gets out when he's 18, and while he was gone, his mom had moved. She wasn't far away, but she wasn't right in the heart of the neighborhood anymore. And so he's over there staying with his mom. He's got a girlfriend. He had a girlfriend before he went in. She wrote it out with him. He's getting ready to have a daughter. She's pregnant, and he just realizes, it's time for me to man up, right? Time for me to kind of get my stuff together. I'm 18 now. It's not just juvenile hall and camps and ranches and stuff. Now you're talking the joint, and I don't want that for my life. He grew up mostly with his mom. His mom and his dad were around at first, and dysfunctional relationship. The dad was really violent. He wound up going off to prison or whatever, and so it was just him and his mom. Mom struggled, but did the best that she could, and he loved his mom. He loved his mom. So he decides he's gonna be on the straight and narrow, right? Now he doesn't go through any big elaborate process. He just kind of gets out and keeps his distance a little bit from the neighborhood, right? And here comes Frank, right? Frank comes by one day. He's been out a few months, right? Frank's been out, and Frank's like, "Hey, man, look, you haven't kicked in a while. Haven't seen you in a while. We're gonna go to the park later, man. Just some of the fellas and go out there, hang out. Have a few beers, maybe smoke a little bit, and you should come by. You should come kick it because nobody's really seen you around the neighborhood much." And Joe's sitting there and he's like, "Man, I don't really want to go, but honestly, I kind of do." He's Frank's right. Frank's my friend. Beyond gang stuff, just Frank's my friend, my oldest friend that I have. I haven't seen him in a while because Frank's kind of running amok. But that's still my buddy, man. We had great times together, and it'd be nice to hang out. I've been spending a lot of time with my old lady and kind of staying home and trying to keep my probation officer happy. And it'd be cool, go hang out for a little bit, right? Get some fresh air. And, they weren't talking about anything crazy. Just go kick it at the park. So nighttime rolls around and Joe heads out to go meet up with the fellas. And along the way, he has some issues, right? The little stuff happens that kind of, in hindsight, makes him second guess. Should I really be heading over here? And maybe I should just stay home. Maybe I should just turn around. But he kind of leaves it up to chance and says, well, if I make it this far, then I'll kind of do this. And so he goes like, well, if I make it to the homeboy's house in time, then okay, it's meant to be. But if I don't make it in time, then it's not meant to be. And let me walk a little bit slower, right? And but he makes it. The fellas see him, they snatch him up. What's up, fool? Let's go. So they jump in a car. They head in a car down to the park, and they're hanging out at the park. And they're 18, right? Frank's 18, Joe's 18. The other folks at the park are a little bit younger, right? 16, 15, even 14, right? Youngsters. But they're not banging. They're all gang members, but it's no funk. It's just hanging out. They're doing what kids do, right? Joe and Frank are the only adults that are there, the only 18-year-olds, you know. And here comes another guy. He pulls up to the park, and he's younger, and he's got his car, and he's got two girls with him, right? Two girls. They're like 14, 15, right? One's 14, one's 15. So he pulls up with them, and the girls are hanging out. And there's one girl, and she's a little faster than the rest, right? She's young, she's 14. She's a little faster than the rest, and she starts kind of choosing up on one of the younger homies, and they go into the bathroom at the park, and they fool around. They're in there for a few minutes, right? It's nothing serious. Probably nobody's clothes getting taken off, nothing like that. Just little kid stuff, right? Kid stuff. Not the kind of stuff I want my 14 and 15-year-old daughter doing, but it is what it is, right? So they fool around and they come out and there's some flirting and stuff, and no harm, no foul. The night goes on a little bit, and that same girl, she starts choosing up on another little youngster, right? Like a little 15-year-old maybe, and they go into the bathroom and they fool around. Same thing. They're in there for a few minutes. It's ha giggles. They're kind of holding hands when they come out. Nobody's all flustered or anything else, and of course there's little gossip and clowning going back and forth, but it's childish, right? It's behavior that they ain't quite grown enough to do, but it's nonetheless still kind of childish in how they're doing it. And so they're hanging out at the park, and now it's pretty dark, and they're like, man, if we keep hanging out here, who knows, man, cops might come by or this, rivals, who knows, right? We're having a good time. Let's go out to the homeboy's property, right? Homeboy's family has property, and they're out in the fields, right? So they go out to that property, and the party continues, right? And they took two cars. The car that Frank and Joe had came in, along with some of the other fellas, and then the guy that, the kid that had brought the two girls, takes them in their car. They go meet up, at this ranch, and they're hanging out over there. Same thing, right? Just keeping the party going. And in the process of this, the girls get into a fight, right? The girls get into a fight because obviously one of the girls is getting more attention than the other, right? Because of her behavior, to be quite honest, right? She's got the attention of the boys. And it's not a ton of people here. There's not, 20 people or anything else. It's just a handful, right? Maybe 10, give or take. And so, but they're the only two girls. So they wind up getting into a fight, right? They get into a fight, and the kid that brought the girls, he leaves with the one girl, the fast girl, shall we say, right? She stays, right? And again, when I say fast, I don't mean that she's sleeping with everybody or anything else. It's a step above flirting, So she stays, and she chooses up on another youngster, right? So her and this other kid, they go into like this little shack, kind of watch room almost. I guess it's to kind of overlook, the workers in the fields and whatnot, So they go in there, and as they're in there, kind of doing their same thing, the group kind of moves by the door. So they're eavesdropping now, right? Oh, let's see if we can hear anything, whatever. And you hear little giggles and shit, but nothing major. And they're not in there too long, right? And the girl had never stayed behind closed doors with any boy too long, right? Just a few minutes. But they're staying in there, and all of a sudden Frank, right? Joe's friend, right? Frank, he opens up the door and just walks in, kicks that youngster out, tells the youngster, hey man, get out of here, right? And so youngster comes out, kind of like, man, but that's the big homie, right? Frank's a big guy, right? He's a real big dude, and known for being violent and all that good stuff, right? So he goes in there, and it's a different vibe, right? It's a different vibe. They stay in the room longer, right? And there's not giggles and stuff anymore. There's not loud screams or anything else, but you could feel the weight of the environment changing. So you got these kids outside, and one of the kids, the first one that went in the restroom with the girl back at the park, is like, man, what's Frank in there doing, bro? Like, this ain't cool. What if Frank's in there doing something, man? And then what if she says we all did something, like, and there's alcohol involved, and there's weed involved, and there's youthfulness, and there's paranoia. These kids start to get ahead of themselves, right? Well, what if? And all the while, Frank's staying in the room with this girl, right? Frank's 18, the girl's 14. Frank's staying in the room with her, and then eventually he comes out, and he's hot and heavy, and and got kind of a rage look in his face, right? It's not the same vibe as it was when that girl came out of the room with the other boys. And in this case, the girl's not coming out of the room with them. There's no holding hands. There's no giggles, right? She's still in there. And he comes out, people are like, damn, what happened, right? And eventually the girl comes out, and again, she don't look the same, right? To this day, nobody knows for sure what happened behind that door, right? But I think you guys get my drift of what was going on and what it seemed like, right? So the girl comes out, and she says, hey, man, take me home. I want to go home. Take me home, right? Party's over. And you could tell she'd been crying. You could tell her clothes kind of messed up. She's not in a good place, She's not making any accusations. She's not accusing anybody of anything. Clearly, though, she's like, man, I'm going to go home. I want to go home. And there's only one car there to take her home, right, amongst the youngsters. Because remember, the car she came in, that little youngster, he had already left with the other girl after they had gotten into a little squabble. So they all jump in the car, right? Frank jumps in the car. Joe jumps in the car, and there's another youngster, there's a couple, 3 youngsters in the back. And then the girl, of course. So they're going to take the girl home, right? And they pull over, right? There's teenagers, like I said, a lot of drink or whatnot. Somebody's like, hey, I got to take a leak, right? So they pull over. Frank get out the car. Joe gets out the car. Another youngster gets out the car. Everybody's kind of lined up. Not everybody gets out the car, but a few of the guys get out the car. Kids, really, except for Frank and Joe. And they kind of line up, and they're taking a leak, right? And all of a sudden, you hear screams from inside the car, right? And it's like, 4-door, Monty, Regal type car. And you hear screams from inside the car, and it's the girl. What are you doing? What are you doing? Hey, wait, stop. Wait, no, you don't have to do this. Hey, and she's hurt. And she's hurt, and she's pleading. And they look over like, man, what's going on? And that first youngster that she went in the bathroom with, apparently he had a blade on him, right? Now, he was known to carry a blade. He'd blasted a few people recently. He had been put on the hood maybe like a month prior, right? So he was fairly new as a homeboy, quote unquote, and so he'd been running around putting in work, trying to show, he's about that life. And so it's no surprise that he had a blade on him. It's a surprise he's using it on this girl, right? And he's a kid too, man. He's maybe like a year older than her, right? But he's just blasting her. And so kind of throw the door open. Somebody opens up the door, and she kind of falls out the door, half in the car, half out of the car. And she's blasted pretty bad. She's alive, but she's blasted pretty bad, right? And Frank goes over there, kind of the big homie, so to speak, right? And in the eyes of these youngsters. And Frank goes over there. "Man, what you doing?" "Nah, man, she was gonna say something. She was gonna get you in trouble. She was gonna get us in trouble. Blah blah blah." Passes the knife to Frank. Right. Frank takes it and almost takes her top off. You know what I mean? She's not suffering anymore. It's over. Right. And and Joe's sitting there. The other kids sitting there. They're all dead. They're dazed, dazed and amazed. Like what? Everything happened so fast. You know, like it was all fun and games all through the night. You know, and then Frank goes in the room and it kind of changes the mood of the party, so to speak. And very quickly afterwards, they're in a car, they're leaving. "Okay, man, we'll go drop her off and just call this, this to end the night." You know, and you pull over to take a leak, and all of a sudden now there's a body laying there on the side of the road. You just watched it all unfold. So everybody's shocked, right? They drive off. They leave her there. They drive off. And, grab little things from the house, whatever, and they're planning now, right? Because they're kids, right? And clearly, this happens, so we got to go on the run, right? We got to make preparations to go on the run, And everybody's just kind of stuck. Like, I don't know if you've ever been in a car when something's escalated. Now, granted, I've never been in a car after something like that happens, right? But I've been in a car where you're all out having a blast, and then something pops off all of a sudden, and there's an extreme response to that something popping off, and then you're just trying to get away from the scene. And at first there's like, "Man, fool, what did you do?" and this and that, and then there's a calmness that falls over the car, right? As everybody kind of gets stuck in their own thoughts of, "Man, what did I just do? Like, this could change my life, what just happened?" And then the paranoia kicks in. You start looking at the people around you like, "Hey, man, is that fool gonna keep it real? Is that fool gonna keep it solid? Is that fool gonna tell whatnot?" Again, I've been in those situations more times than I care to count. Again, not with the specifics of this story at all, but other situations, where there's been extreme violence. And so if you've been in that situation, you know what that feels like. And if you haven't, I'm happy for you, and I hope you never are, right? And I would encourage you to make choices to reduce the chance that you would ever be in that situation, because it's not fun, and some of that stuff never goes away. But nonetheless, to the story, right? The folks wind up getting picked up, right? Cops find out everything because obviously they find the body and her friend, because the two girls that fought, they were really good friends. It just tempers got a little heated, and they got into it, a little jealousy, a little rage, a little teenage stuff. But they were good friends, and so when the girl that had left the party wasn't able to get a hold of the girl who stayed at the party, she got kind of freaked out and then find out that she's found on the road, and she's like, "Man, we was at a party and this is all the people we were with. We were over here, we were with all these people." So the cops know, they know everybody involved, but they don't know what happened because that girl doesn't know what happened because she left early, right? So everybody gets picked up, right? Everybody. And everybody talks. Everybody talks. Cops, again, you're talking 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and then you got Joe and Frank, right? 18-year-olds. And so they're sitting in the county, everybody else is in juvenile hall, and everybody talked. Everybody gave statements, right? So it's kind of a big headline case locally, right? It's a big deal, and for other reasons that I'm not necessarily getting, that I'm not going to get into here, but it's a big case, So Frank goes to court, right? Goes to court. Now, mind you, in Joe's mind, my life just ended, right? And granted, so did this little girls, and that's tragic. But from a selfish perspective, like damn, I was getting my life together. I got a daughter on the way. Um, Now I'm sitting here for all this, right? Um, my life is over. My life is over, and I have nothing to do with nothing. You know what I'm saying? And there was other people there that didn't really have nothing to do with nothing either. But and so they take Frank to court, right? Frank and Joe are cellies in the county. They take Frank out to court to his initial, hearing, right? And they take Joe to the holding cage. And Frank comes walking by from court. Joe's in the holding tank. He's hearing the comments from the other dudes in the county because they know the case. They know the circumstances. So they're looking at him like, yeah, fool, okay, right? He knows it don't look good, right? They like the whole case. Nothing about this looks good. This is not gang shit. Like, this ain't what gang shit is supposed to be about. Right? And so Frank comes through, and he's like, bro, they're saying that's it. They're gonna go for the max, right? And Joe's like, man, yeah, good. And he's haunted, right? And Frank's haunted too. And they didn't really talk about it much when they were cellies, because what do you talk about after a thing like that? Besides, man, just what do you say, right? Joe's not asking the hard questions because he don't want the answers, right? Frank's like, man, what'd that kid do? Why that kid put me in a position to do this? That other young guy with the knife, right? And so kind of passing the buck, but really just quiet, a little bit of reflection on their childhood. I remember we were 8 and we stole a little bubble gum, that kind of stuff. As they realized that those days are over, the cops come to Joe, right? Sheriffs come to Joe and they say, hey, everybody made statements, right? And Joe knew that already. Joe was the last one to get picked up. So when Joe got picked up and he tried to, little BS cover story with the cops, he actually, had turned himself in. But regardless, when Joe gets picked up, and they ask him, hey, man, what happened? He's like, I got drunk and fell asleep. And they were like, yeah, right. And then they lined out for him exactly what happened. That's how he knew that people had made statements, because the cops had almost a better recollection of it than he did. I remember when I caught my case for the attempted murder, and I went to the police station to give a statement because they had already arrested what I thought was a homeboy of mine, and I felt bad that he was arrested. He really didn't have anything to do with it. And so I was like, he couldn't have been there and had anything to do with it. He was with me, and we were somewhere else, and da-da-da, 19, thinking I got it all figured out. I'm going to go in there and outsmart the cops. And the cops were like, oh, well, since you're here. And they told me they knew everything from what happened before we got to the party, to the exchange, to me shooting the guy, to where we went afterwards. I was like, wow, it's like they were there. And of course it was like that because the guy that they had arrested had told him everything, and he was there. But so I know that feeling when you're like trying to BS the cops and you think you're smarter than them, and you just don't conceive of the fact that they already know everything. And so anyways, they already knew everything, and so they tell Joe, hey, suspect or witness, so where you gonna be, right? And he chooses witness. He chooses witness over suspect. And they came at him because with everybody giving their stories, I think they realized, okay, this dude's 18, right? So he's old enough to pay the ultimate consequence for this if it goes that far. And he seems to have had the least to do with this. Based on all these statements, it seems like he was a bystander for this. So maybe he'll be the weak link that we can flip. And they were right. Um, so everybody else goes to jail. Some for a little bit of time, some for a little longer time. Uh, he doesn't go to jail, right? And what happened behind that door, um, in that little shack with Frank, that never comes out in court. That's not a part of the case, right? So, so there's no jacket for that. There's rumors, there's speculation, there's this and that, but that whole little squad rides together and they have each other's back, and they're not folding on each other. Everybody got a dirty little secret, but if none of us tell our dirty secret, then essentially we're all clean. Nobody knows, right? So Joe doesn't do time. Joe stays out, and Joe's haunted. He's haunted by what he saw. He stops gangbanging that day, right? That day when all this happens is the moment he's thoroughly disgusted with the concept of being in a gang, right? Because a lot of these dudes stayed gang members, and they stayed active for the terms we would use today, right? And it's like, anybody that accepts this, bro, I don't want to be a part of that group, and I don't want to be a part of any group. And he relives that day, right? Of what if I just didn't go to the park, right? Now, whether he's at the park or not, probably the rest of the events unfold the same way. Who knows, right? Anytime you change a variable, you potentially change the outcome of the whole situation. So nobody actually knows, but Joe wasn't supposed to be there, right? And again, what do you do? And for those among you that are comfortable with violence, I've noticed there's a lot of people who have never really engaged in serious violence, but who swear that that's what they would do if the circumstances called for it. Well, if I was there, I would. Okay, but have you ever done anything like that? And if the answer is no, then I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying, how could you be so certain, right? But Joe and Frank and all, they've engaged in violence, right? So Frank's a lot bigger than Joe, right? It's his best friend from childhood. Doesn't even want to believe the worst of what could have happened in that room, right? And even in that situation on the side of the road, like, what do? You don't have a weapon, right? Do you attack your best friend from childhood, right? And the shock of seeing all, like, just the shock, man. I can only imagine, right? Like I said, I've been in some situations where I've felt a little bit of shock. Don't get me wrong. That, no, man, no. And so, but he tells, he cooperates, right? But is Joe a snitch? A word that gets thrown around a lot, rat. I use the word rat all the time in talking about people involved in a criminal lifestyle who then tell on other people involved in a criminal lifestyle, like that's a rat, and not saying I hate you for it, judge for you. Everybody's story is their own. So I don't say that as a way to put somebody down. It's just more, that is a identifier. They could also be a parent or a father or a great community servant or whatever else, so, but those words we throw around, right? And I only mention me using it because I'm not trying to pretend like I don't. So is Joe a rat? Because he was involved in a lifestyle, right? He knew what it was to be a teenage gang member. He knew what it was to have some involvement in the criminal justice system as a kid. He knew how to hold his mud. He knew how to stick to the script. He was with a bunch of other quote unquote homeboys, right? But he told what he saw. And I know in some people's minds, oh, that's a rat. You ratted the homies out. Um, I'm curious what you think though. And what would you have done then? Does does that behavior go unchecked? Is being from the same neighborhood give somebody a license to just get away with whatever they want to get away with, and you can't do nothing about it because you guys are from the same neighborhood, or because you guys grew up together, or because you were close friends? The sad thing is, I think to a lot of people, the answer to that would be yes, right? And if the facts were different than this case, I would probably say yes too. Definitely in my younger years, I would have. But in this case, I think Joe did the right thing, man. And I've never been one to cooperate with law enforcement, so that doesn't make me any better than anybody else or any worse than anybody else. I'm just saying it's not like, oh, well, I've made a decision like that before, and then people say, well, of course you would agree with Joe. Like, I actually haven't been in a situation where I felt like that was the right decision, but I've never been in a situation like this either. And I said, Joe left the lifestyle. He didn't try to be a gang member after that. He did nothing else. Doesn't mean he was perfect. Doesn't mean he didn't get in trouble. He's traumatized. I think everybody from that day is traumatized, right? But where's doing the right thing, right? And that's I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts and whatnot in the comments. If I would ask this, just out of respect, man, if you have an idea of what particular this is about, leave that out of the comments. If I see it, I'll probably delete it, right? Just because I don't want people to fixate on that other outside stuff. I'm just talking about this, talking about what I've shared here only, right? Not the rest of the stuff. Joe paid a price, and I'm not saying it's a fair price or a right price or anything else, but Joe paid a price for having one foot in and one foot out. Joe did not belong at a park hanging out with gang members when he didn't want to do gang shit. And I'm not saying, again, I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that what I described qualifies even remotely as quote unquote gang stuff. No, it's no. But boy, didn't belong hanging around with reckless folks that had different priorities in life, folks that had different agenda. Frankly, folks that were much younger and more reckless. And there's no foresight or nothing else. Man, these were children, 14, 15-year-old children. At 18, 19, 20, you don't belong around kids that age, right? And because you never know. Maybe this doesn't happen, but maybe some rivals pull up at the park and they hop out. And things get a little dicey. Some people lose their lives. Now you're sitting in jail looking at all day. And when you left to just go have some beer with the fellas, man, like, look, I've been doing good. I've been staying out of trouble. I've been staying out the mix. Like, no harm, no foul. Let's go hang out for a minute. It's just us at the park. We're not riding around. We're not looking to go put in work. We're not looking to start stuff. It's just hanging out with the boys. But you know that those boys are on a different time than you are. You never earn the right to take a break from what you're doing that works. If staying out the way and keeping your distance and changing your people, places, and things is working for you, it's not like, well, I've been doing that for 6 months, so I deserve to not do that today as a treat to myself. Because be careful what you ask for. You just might get it, man. So, anyways, this is something I'd like to talk about further, but I wanted to put it out there to you guys. It's kind of a one of a kind. I haven't done stuff like this before, but what would you do, man? Help others move to excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. And yeah, don't be lukewarm, man. Don't be lukewarm. Don't 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And again, we'll talk about that more in the future. Take care.